Story 1 by Reddit user Natural Born Child. This takes place back in 2012 when I was about 16 and my sister was about 6. My mum, stepdad, sister and I lived in this 1960s mid-mod house. According to our neighbours, our house and the house next door were trap houses year before we moved in, and we saw shadow people in the house regularly. Our dog wouldn't go in certain rooms and areas, and in these particular spots I'd see a really tall, hunched-over shadow person at least every other day. One night, I was home with my dog. My mum and stepdad were out at a party and wouldn't be home until the wee hours, and my sister was spending the night at our grandma's. She wouldn't be coming home at all, for any reason. When I was in the living room with the dog watching TV, clear as day, I heard the sound of the door swing open and what sounded like my sister shouting, "We're home!" Then, complete silence. No footsteps, no door shutting. I was willing to think it was my imagination until the dog stood up and growled in the direction of the front door. And she was a sweet, gentle black lab who hardly barked or growled at anything. I sat there and held her saying the Lord's Prayer over and over until I felt brave enough to go check the front door. I knew in my head that nobody was there, and it had been a few minutes. It was a small house, and if my grandma and sister were really there, they would have come to the living room where I was immediately. I told my mum about this the next day when my sister wasn't around, and apparently, a few weeks before, something similar happened, but it was the sound of the door opening and closing. They thought it was my stepdad, but it was nobody. I still haven't told my sister to this day, but maybe I will because she's almost 17 and harder to frighten these days. I wonder why they were imitating a little girl, and why a spirit would repeatedly try to get us to come to the front door. Story 2 by Reddit user TechnoCloudMal5. I have experienced paranormal things since I was a child. I've always been open and receptive to paranormal things, and possibly to a fault. When I started dating my now husband, I would tell him all sorts of stories of things that I experienced through my childhood and teenage years. He has always been fascinated by the paranormal, and my stories always intrigued him, but he has never experienced anything for himself until we moved in together. I have always been convinced that I had a clinger spirit that has attached to me somewhere in life and just stayed along for the ride. We've lived in different locations and always experienced the same things at each home. It was never anything malicious, and I always joked that my Casper was just doing things to say hi, to let me know he's there. My husband just laughed it off because there was never a real issue, and everything seemed harmless and playful. We have walked into our offices with our desk chairs spinning when no one was in the room. We have smart TVs, and they all rotate, turning on in the middle of the night as if someone was trying to watch TV, scrolling through the apps to select Netflix or Hulu. I've also seen it just run through the different HDMI options. Items that have specific locations, like keys, will end up in random places like under the kitchen sink or in a sock drawer. We shut our closet doors at night, and we will wake up with them wide open. I can't sleep if there is even a sliver of light showing in my room, and any light will wake me from a dead sleep. I wake up to the bathroom light switching on quite often, which requires me to get out of bed and turn it off so I can go back to sleep. My husband's computer powers on by itself, and it's a big tower with a power button that takes a little effort to push. We've become used to those things, but lately something else has started, and I think it's mimicking me. Lately, when I'm downstairs and my husband is in his office upstairs, he will walk to the landing of our stairwell and ask me if I called his name. Usually, if I need something or I have a question for him, I will just call his cell if I'm too lazy to run upstairs or if I'm in the middle of cooking and can't leave the stove. Even when I'm laying down in bed and he's on his computer in the same room, he will pull off his headphones and ask me what I need. For a while I was thinking, am I actually losing my mind? Am I actually saying something and not realizing it? He has stopped gaming midstream to come and find me, aggravated that I am calling him when I literally haven't said a word. Every time I tell him that I didn't say his name, he gets this confused look like he's trying to read my face to see if I'm telling the truth. Yesterday was the turning point. I was laying in bed reading, and he threw a bottle of water on the bed next to me. I asked him why he brought me a bottle of water, and he said, "Do you not remember asking me for water?" I told him no, and pointed to a bottle of water on the nightstand that I had brought to bed when I laid down. He said, "You literally just yelled down for me to bring you a cold bottle of water." I explained to him that I did not say that because I had my own cold water that I brought to bed. We both agreed that something really strange is happening because this has just started within the last month, and I don't know if this is my entity that has followed me just now becoming vocal, or if this is something new. We're both of sound mind and neither of us have any sort of mental issue that we're aware of that would have me speaking without knowing it, or him hearing things. Aside from extreme annoyance, is there a real cause for concern? Update. Thank you everyone for your comments and private messages from my first post regarding the mimic in my house. You have provided great suggestions and theories, all of which my husband and I discussed on a long drive as we didn't want to talk about it in the house. I may be able to cross a few off the list. Here is the first post if you are interested in reading it. We've tested for leaks and learned that we do not have any in our home. Thank God. We also came up with the idea to text each other for a week when he hears me calling him while in separate rooms. We've been successful, but I also believe it's become a catalyst to the entire situation. I feel like we've annoyed it because we're not having that verbal conversation any longer. I call it a catalyst because it's now happening to me too. Within the last week, I've had 2 instances where I've heard my husband talk to me. Once in the laundry room asking if we had dinner plans when he was actually on a conference call in his office. The other instance was a couple of days ago down the hall from our bedroom when he asked me if I'd seen his sketchbook, which is a custom-made, hand-sewn, leather-bound book that I purchased for him 8 years ago. It is his most cherished gift from me, and is kept in a very specific spot. This entity does move things from time to time, but this book is very heavy and stays on his drafting table when he isn't using it. Both times I asked my husband if he said those things, and both times he said no. He has heard my voice a few times in the past week as well, twice calling his name and asking if he has seen my phone, and once asking if he'd grab me a drink. Previously, someone asked if he only hears me calling to him when he has on headphones. He wasn't wearing headphones any of the times that he heard me this past week, so we've been able to rule that out. A few strange things have started happening that weren't happening previously. The TVs haven't turned on by themselves since my first post, but we have a salt lamp that sat on my husband's bedside table that now flickers 5 times before the light stays solid. We've moved it to a different outlet near his desk and changed the bulb, but neither has made a difference. We also have 2 fans in our bedroom, a ceiling fan and a standing fan. Both have been turning off in the middle of the night. To me, that's worse than the TVs turning on, because I rely on the sound and constant breeze to sleep comfortably, so as soon as they turn off, which is within seconds of each other, I wake up. Neither fan is set on a timer. We've both checked. The bathroom lights continue to turn on randomly at night, and we still wake up to the closet doors opened in the morning after closing them the night before. I also explained in the first post that I did mess with a Ouija board when I was about 16. Nothing significant ever came of those few times to my knowledge, as we just ended up blaming each other for moving the planchette. Since my first paranormal memory is from when I was about 4, I don't feel this current situation was brought on from my teenage stupidity. I believe it's still my clinger trying to get attention, or something attached to this house or property. We've purchased sage but haven't burned it yet because I want to make sure we're doing it correctly. I've heard numerous ways to do it. Windows open, windows shut, and I don't want to agitate it. I've also been in touch with my family's pastor. We have a meeting scheduled next week to sit down and go over everything so we can come up with a plan of how he may be able to help. We still don't feel like we're in danger, but it's becoming very clear that something is happening due to the persistence to get our attention. Again, thank you for all your advice and theories. If you have any other suggestions, I welcome them all. Before I continue to the next story, I just want to say thank you for choosing to watch this video, and I hope you enjoy my narration. If you are, please go ahead and hit the like button, and if you don't already, subscribe to my channel. It really helps me out. Also, please leave a comment and let me know what you thought of these stories. Comments really help with the YouTube algorithm and will really help my channel to grow. Story 3 by Reddit user ksaf0520. Ever since I watched a show on Netflix, I have called entities with a specific behavior mimics. Like the name implies, they tend to mimic things like animals, specific voices, and even apparitions that look like family members or friends. For at least about 4 years now, I've had situations that can be questioned as paranormal, but also may be explained logically. It seems like these occasions are getting more frequent and lean away more towards an entity than a super coincidence of very often scares. I've experienced the garden variety. Was that the AC, creaking boards, wind outside, or was it paranormal sort of things? Doors creaking an inch or two open, creepy taps, shuffling in the kitchen around the corner of the room darker than the rest of the night, etc. Here, lately, things have been interestingly loud. Of course, it's all at night save for one instance, and I'm the only one awake, but the noises I'm speaking of are not quite enough to question if I imagined it. I have heard a scream all the way across the house similar to my daughter's after a bad dream, but the tone and pitch was just a tad bit off. And she was peacefully asleep. I've heard 3 loud, perfectly timed apart bangs that were obviously originating from inside, not outside. Heard my boyfriend call me in the kitchen, followed by shuffling feet, just to hear his loud snore in the bedroom immediately after. The sounds of my daughter and boyfriend are why I assume it's a mimic. I've had some pretty unexplainable things happen in the past 2 houses too, so if it is all the same thing, it's attached to me, not the house. Story 4 by Reddit user Chatoilimithu. About 5 or 6 years ago, a group of friends and I would hang out at a specific home being rented by 2 people in our group, one of whom I was dating. Relevance to come later. The home itself was a duplex, and the guy who lived in the other side of the home was a friend of the group and rarely ever home. On multiple occasions, we would hear various voices throughout the house. Once, while I was showering, I heard the front door open and close, and then the distinct sounds of footsteps coming through the living room. When I got out of the shower to check, no one was there. There wasn't even a car parked in either driveway. My partner at the time had a full-fledged conversation with what he thought was his roommate, only to discover he'd been talking to thin air. Oddly enough, that incident also occurred while he was in the bathroom getting ready for work. He heard his roommate come home, kick his shoes off, and proceed to ask him a few questions about his day and what he was doing. When he came out of the bathroom to continue the conversation, he opened the door to total darkness. No one was home, and the lights in the house were all off. One night, while having drinks with friends, I went inside to pour myself a refill and freshen up. Suddenly, a few members of the friend group rush in, panicked, one of them holding his pistol. They proceeded to ask me what was wrong, and that they heard a man's voice outside followed by my voice saying, "Help!" I assured them that no such thing happened, but they were all insistent that it was my voice. There were countless other voices heard, especially those that mimicked the two permanent residents of the home and members of our friend group. Boot prints appeared on a wall in one of the bedrooms, proving absolutely impossible to remove. Most people constantly felt watched while in the home. Some people were slapped, others scratched, and eventually, no one would stay more than a few minutes alone inside. Not to mention, sleeping there was damn near impossible due to the noises and general dark feeling throughout. A door leading into the kitchen from the carport would fly open, despite being shut, and even, on a few occasions, locked. The house to the right of the property had a fenced-in pool, and on more than one occasion when the kitchen door would fly open, so would the gate to the swimming pool. This house was not occupied. Most of the homes on the street were built in the 1950s and 1960s, so the history is recent and fairly innocuous. Unfortunately, in a horrific turn of events, one of our closest friends eventually shot himself while in his truck in the driveway during a party. None of us know if it was truly intentional or a horrendous accident, but I've not been back to the house since 2014, and I can barely drive by without feeling physically sick. Story 5 by Reddit user Millerverse. I moved into my apartment about a year ago. My previous home was pretty active, i.e., we heard a train go through our backyard in the middle of the night. Guests would report people moving around in our room when we weren't home, and my ex-wife coming home to all the lights on after she turned them all off. The timing for my apartment being available was odd, but convenient. I'd always had an urge to ask the property management company if someone had died in my apartment, but never did. There have been a few times when I feel like I'm not alone, but I'm not in danger. There have been 3 instances where something was making a direct attempt to interact with me. 1. I was woken up in the middle of the night, and something was clearly in the corner of the room with ill intent. I watched it for a moment, and it wouldn't go away until I recited the Lord's Prayer a few times. I haven't felt that one since. 2. A friend was coming over for dinner, and I leave my door unlocked when they do. I always want my friends to feel comfortable just coming in. I was getting out of the shower, getting dried off and dressed, and I heard my friend say, "Hey, I'm here." I called back, "I'll be right out." I go to the kitchen expecting my friend, and they aren't there. Not even 5 minutes later, my friend comes walking in. I ask if she'd been playing with me. She had no idea what I was talking about. 3. I was asleep one night, not comfortably resting. I think I was having a bad dream. Something on my mind was keeping me in shallow sleep. If I remember the dream correctly, something felt impending. Clear as day, I hear my mother shout my given name in the tone she used when she was trying to get my attention urgently. My mother had been gone since 2018. I'd spoken to a few spiritual friends, and they tell me the thing is trying to contact me, and I should ask what it wants. I am reticent to do that because I know once you go communicating with things like that, you are holding the door open for trouble. So my question is, does this sound familiar to anyone? Should I be alarmed? Update. I spoke with a friend who is a member of the local Lakota and Tuscarora tribes. Windy men are part of the local traditions. I was advised not to acknowledge it, respond to it, or try to reach out to it. If I hear a knock at the door at night, and I don't see anyone through the peephole, don't open the door. That's just good safety advice in general. Also, I am not to whistle at night near the woods behind my apartment. I have placed rosaries in every room of my apartment, said a prayer for protection, and did a deep clean of my apartment with positive music playing and full of positive intent. The mood in the place is much lighter now. Story 6 by Reddit user Uncomfortable Artist. There's this spirit that is attached to my mum, and it has been for a long time. When I was born, it switched its gaze to me. This thing has traumatized me for my entire life. It mimics my family members' voices. It's threatened my boyfriend over the phone. It shows itself to me in shadow forms. So much stuff that's obviously terrified me over the years. I guess what I'm asking is if anyone can help me identify what kind of spirit this is and how to get rid of it. Because this thing has brought me so much fear in my life that I can't handle if it decides to come back for some reason. Let me explain. It started off as hearing my name being called by my mum and asking her if she needed me, just to be told she never called for me in the first place. Same exact thing would happen to all of my siblings. But the weirdest part is, it can pick and choose who it hears. For example, I'd be sitting next to my sister and hear my name being called by my mum. I'd get up and leave to see what she needed, just to get told she never needed me. I'd walk back to my sister and ask if she heard my mum call my name, and she said she never heard anything. Once we moved out of state and things were calm, I thought it finally detached itself from my family, and we were free from it. Man, was I wrong. One night, I heard my mum call for me about 1 a.m, so I went and asked her what she needed, and she said she never called for me. I started freaking out because it was happening again, so I went back upstairs and sat in the upstairs living room because I was afraid. I positioned myself to where I could see my room and my sister's room, because if I needed her, I could just wake her up and feel even a little bit more safe. Then I heard it, still in my mother's voice, clear as day, say my first name, super drawn out, like it was taunting me, like it knew it scared me, and it wanted to do it more. Keep in mind, no one in my family uses my name. I have a childhood nickname that everyone to this day still uses. After saying my name, it started laughing, like it got what it wanted. And that was to scare me, and the spirit knew it succeeded. Things like that happened for a long time until I got a new boyfriend and the energy in the house shifted. Pure hatred filled my house. You could feel it in the air. This thing hated the idea of my boyfriend being in the house. It flung the shower curtain at him while using the bathroom, and even went as far as to threaten his life over the phone one night. This started with him hearing his name being called through my phone when I was sleeping. He got freaked out and texted me about it in the morning. We again fell asleep on the phone the next night, and he woke up to this spirit using its real voice. Keep in mind, none of us have ever heard its real voice, threatening to kill him if he ever stepped foot in my house again. He hung up while it was still yelling at him, and we never slept while on the phone together again, unless I muted myself right before going to bed, so he wouldn't have to hear it. He never told me exactly what it said or what it sounded like. All he told me was that it was demonic sounding. Things have died down now, just the occasional cold spots, and if I talk about it too much, I get a sharp pain in my chest. I really do hope someone can help me. I can't live with this thing coming back. The remaining stories in this collection are paranormal stories that are not necessarily about mimics. Story 7 by Reddit user Aya787. Okay, so my last post got on YouTube and I wanted to tell you about the other stuff. Again, still looking for answers as to why and what is going on. I'm scared for my safety at times by what I'm about to tell you. Luckily, it hasn't affected my day-to-day life, but I will say I don't sleep without at least 3 blades in my room with me. Let's start with the oldest one that has clung to me. Now, as I mentioned before, I've seen things like visions or apparitions, stuff no one else sees. I even hear stuff, but mostly at school. For instance, I heard the answer to a math question whispered in my left ear about 2 sentences before my teacher said it. It wasn't scary, but creepy, so I don't know why this guy attached himself to me. But there have been other reports of a shadow man, who I now know is not only an entity that haunts me, but a similar one that haunts Corey Shear, a YouTuber who gets dragged into paranormal investigations by his many friends. Shadow Man first showed up to me outside my house. It was late, and I couldn't get to sleep, so I spent some time downstairs watching movies in the dark. Now, we don't have a light on in this street, or my father's house, except for across the road on the corner, not close to our house. But I had the instinct to look out my window. Standing at the end of the yard, looking at me specifically through the window, was a man dressed in a black suit with a red tie. Think Slender Man, but shorter. He looked at me, like directly at me. I couldn't stand to look at him. I was crying the instant I saw him, crying as I type this now. Since then, he's haunted me in my dreams for over 3 years, always pulling the same antics of taking the people I love and killing them. I've not slept well for a while, but I've gotten better. What is this thing and how do I stop it? This next part I'll try to keep short. I recently moved into a house that belonged to a family friend. My grandmother was given the house after the previous owner died, and she gave it to my mum, who now owns the place. But really, we own the building, not the plot of land. I should also mention this house was pretty empty for a good stretch of time, and squatters broke in at one point and took food and stuff. I had issues with that for a while, which accounts for me having a weapon on me. Remember, I don't not have a knife on me at the best of times. The previous owner, however, never left. At night, if you look into the back room, which was his bedroom, you can see a black figure standing in the corner across from the door, or curled up in a ball. I've determined this is the previous owner because, I don't know, it was a feeling, I guess. He's usually well behaved as long as we keep the door closed and the light off when no one is in there. Otherwise, he throws the garbage can. My second night in that house, I was going to the bathroom and had turned the hall light on. The door to the back room where the owner stayed creaked open, and I could see the darkness of the room. Something I remember were fingers on the doorway. I was half asleep, so I didn't care when I shouted at it. I'm not in the mood right now. I have work in a few hours, I'm tired. And I have my knife in my hand, do not mess with me. Now shut that dang door and go back to sleep. I must have been insane, but I was too exhausted to care. The door shut, on its own. I only realized next morning what it was and locked the door for a few days. Anyways, on to Ralph, who gave me a sense of dread that I was about to die. I was half asleep at the time. My boyfriend had just gone into bed after work at like 3 a.m. or something, and I was settling down to sleep. Then, my door handle moved. It started to jiggle and shake. Thinking it was a squatter, I grabbed my machete from under my bed and tried to get up. The feeling of dread and fear that I felt in that moment told me that if I moved, I was going to die. So, I froze instantly and waited. I was wide awake, and it was still moving. Then, it stopped. Flat out. Then, the stomping came. It stomped to the next door a few inches from mine, and started moving that handle too. My roommate's door. I had a chain lock on my door, but she didn't. The jiggling lasted a few seconds before the stomping came back and went to the back room, opening the door with the creaking it always made, and then that oh-so-familiar click as it shut itself again. I don't know if this was the previous owner or what, but I've dubbed this spirit Ralph. As I do with most phenomena I can't explain, I give it a name, and I'm not scared anymore. But Ralph normally keeps to himself if I keep the hall light on. I've done what I can to appease these spirits, but frankly, with a new roommate moving into the back bedroom and not keeping the hall light on, I'm worried it's going to happen again. I'm the only one with a door that locks from the inside and with a weapon that I know how to use. I want to keep my housemates safe. What do I do? Again, I am asking for help on this, guys. Hit me up if you know anything. Story 8. This story was emailed to me directly by someone who goes by the name Honey Girl. I have no idea how to start this, but I'll try. Around my 8th birthday, I started seeing things. They weren't too scary or anything that you would find particularly interesting, until the day of my birthday. It was the middle of the night, and the house was rather cold due to it being the middle of winter. I woke up in a cold sweat with my feet just slightly exposed from the edge of the blanket. I pulled my feet back in and looked slightly up. That's when I saw it. I saw a bluish figure staring me down from the foot of my bed. I was obviously terrified and flicked on the lights, but I do remember the figure telling me that I needed to tell me goodbye. This, at the time, had no meaning to me until the 3rd grade. I was the new girl along with a girl named Juliana, who quickly became my best friend. I called her Jay. About halfway into the year, my mum told my ghost story to a few friends, all making fun of it. No one had believed me, but then I noticed that Jay looked very similar to the ghost. The next week, I was at my dad's outside making a campfire. My dad pulled me aside from my sisters and sat me down on my bed. I asked him what was up. He asked me if I knew a girl named Juliana in my class. Yeah, I know Jay. My dad then got a look in his eyes before telling me she had fallen off a trail into rapid water and drowned. My mind instantly went back to the ghost, and I decided that it was her telling me to say goodbye. It's been 7 years since, and I still feel guilty about what happened, and I hope she knows I still love her. Thank you for watching and or listening to this video. Again, if you enjoyed it, please go ahead and hit the like button, and if you don't already, go ahead and subscribe to my channel and select the notification bell so you don't miss out on any future uploads. Also, please leave a comment on this video, let me know what you thought of it. Comments really help with the YouTube algorithm and will really help my channel to grow. If you have a story you would like me to narrate, please email it to me at stories@daredeveril.com. I'm getting close to my next major milestone of 100,000 subscribers to this channel. Thank you to everyone who is continuing to subscribe and contributing to this channel's growth by liking videos and leaving comments. Once I get to 100,000 subscribers, my plan is to reward you all with an epic video with over 3 hours of original content. If that is the sort of thing you want to hear, please keep helping this channel to grow. If you want to support my channel even further, there are a number of ways you can do so. You can consider leaving me a tip for this video via my PayPal, link is included in the description. Check out my Teespring store and consider purchasing one of my shirt designs, or head over to Audible, where there is a book Punch by J.R. Park that I narrated. Thanks again for watching.